Hello, I'm David Winstead, and this is the program In the Know, and we're very pleased to have Theresa Kuhns, who is the head CEO of the Maryland Municipal League, and she's all over the state all the time. So thank you for breaking into your time and coming. Theresa, tell me, we were chatting a bit. You have a fascinating background. What brought you to really working with the municipalities in Maryland and defending their issues and interest in Annapolis?
I have probably gone backwards in my background. I started at the national level at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and spent most of my career there. And then I went to the state Maryland Realtors and was a lobbyist for the realtor team working on home ownership rights. So economic development, home ownership, property rights. And then this role came open and I've been there for 7 sessions now, and it really felt like a great opportunity to expand myself. And I know many of my local mayors and county officials and a lot of the state officials prior getting into this position.
Well, that's great.
And actually one of my mayors gave me the advice. I called and said, should I apply for this? It ends tomorrow. And what he said was, MML is a diamond. It needs to be a little bit brightened up. And I said, I can do that. And it was a great decision. Right.
Well, over the years, as we've chatted, I've had the pleasure of going to MML sessions and in Ocean City, which are always a wonderful...
14 days away from this year's.
Exactly, exactly. But a great gathering. It's a wonderful way to connect with local elected officials from around the state, and they always have a good time.
Yes.
I know
they work hard.
The governor usually comes down and has a reception at the MML, and and officials speak. So it's
absolutely. This year, I actually met the governor's team yesterday to go through his schedule. The governor, the first lady, we have Lieutenant Governor, Comptroller, and the Attorney General all doing sessions or speaking at the event. They'll be there for quite a bit, and we have 25 cabinet members now attending.
Wow.
So we have a great, passionate administration who wants to be involved with our cities and towns. They've been a great supporter of us.
Well, that's great.
Yes.
That's great. So let me start off with, we'd love to hear kind of what the primary concerns. This channel is the municipal channel for Montgomery County, so we have 18 jurisdictions and residents throughout the county. So it is interested in a lot of what local issues, right, and a lot of what the governance on the local level is dealing with. Your background on the housing side is quite interesting, because one of the major issues for both municipalities and the county wide is affordable housing.
Absolutely.
And I know that the legislature repeatedly over recent years, as the county councils have, and that kind of dealing with the issue, what can we do to encourage more affordable housing so residents can afford to live in various counties or live in Maryland? What's your thought, kind of representing the efforts on the local level? And
so not even just a local level, it's a housing crisis across the country. There's a supply issue. And in fact, I was just put on a task force for the National League of Cities for housing supply. I'm one of 10 members representing National League of Cities and only one of 2 states being represented. Been on that since March. And the first few meetings we've had, every issue we hear about here in Montgomery County, whether it's local issue or county level, we're hearing across the board nationally. And it's a problem. Supply issues are a large problem. The other state league involved in the task force is California. So she and I have been comparing notes, their director, their average sales price is $800,000. We're a little bit less than that. 35% of the nation's homelessness are in California. So we're trying to learn from one another. We talked about ADUs before we came on today. California did pass an ADU bill. It provided, I think, 40,000 new units. We've had that ADU bill here in Maryland for almost 3 years now.
Right.
And because of my background, being with the realtors before, I understood the ADU background. It was going to be a state mandate. That's where it started. And obviously for us, local government knows their area best. They know what works best. And you can't prescribe a setback in one city and expect it to work in another town. And that was really the main issue with MML. And we were able to create that ADU bill into a task force to share best practices. And that was a large win for MML. We looked at 2,300 bills this session, took positions on 108. The ADU bill was a big win for us. It was one that we came out not initially opposed. The delegate actually is my own personal delegate, so we had very good discussion who proposed the bill itself. And he was able to include MML to give us 2 representatives to sit on that task force.
Excellent.
So our hope is after the next year, I think it's a 1.5 report out.
Okay.
We hear about where it's worked, where it could be. I live in Calvert County. It's Southern Maryland, 90,000 people. We have an ADU ordinance. Most people don't. But it's been in since 2006. I think there's 20.
Wow.
In the whole county. So
there are only 20.
There are only 20 people utilizing it, and it might just be in education. We all know public education is a huge deal.
Right.
But for housing supply, it is an issue, and I think it's going to take working together with the realtors, with the builders.
Right.
with our delegates and with the locals. At the fall conference, which is being held in College Park this year in October, we are going to focus on housing.
Excellent.
Yes, so we're going to see several sessions in one day be all housing focused.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, your connections on the realtor side
Yes.
is fascinating. I mean, for Maryland to be able, so it's basically a lot of the summer session studies are usually through the fall, but this
Absolutely.
is a year and a half.
I think
just
it's a year and a
because
half
of the
report out, yes.
complexity of it and the issues. It really, and of course the interest rate issues haven't helped.
No.
Right. I have a daughter that just found a home, but she worked for a year and a half to find something, and of course the interest rates were going up during the latter part of her search. But
both my sister and brother are outside New York City and have been not in a home and trying to find one for 3 years now. So I completely understand it.
You know, and it sense to me, I'm a real estate, have some real estate background, and I create, you know, there's a lot of intelligence that's available. I mean, what practically has happened elsewhere, Charles County, and
Absolutely.
what you know, it's really, I think it's great that you're helping to pull that community broader. I mean, not just the local housing in all the counties, municipalities, but also around the country. That's excellent.
I think if we're going to solve any problems, whether it's for our own communities or at a larger level, you have to work together. We can be across the table and still talk respectfully and learn from one another. And I hope I bring that to MML and what we're doing.
Right.
We have to be at the conversation. We can't walk away from it. We have to be at the table with the other decision makers in that room.
Right. So you mentioned that your conference coming up is, the slate is very successful,
Yes.
and that you've got Governor Moore's cabinet coming and all of that. What are, in terms of sort of the MML issues that you hear, not just in preparation for that conference, but regularly with your membership, what are some of the things where there's a major match between Governor Moore's priorities and MML interests to date? And I know he's only been in office for, 6 months or more.
It's been an impactful 7 months for him, or 6 months for him. I think I've been in 6 weeks longer than he has. So it's been a good introduction, and it's been a great partnership, frankly.
Right. So where are MML priorities and sort of Governor Moore's agenda?
He had several bills come up this session. One I think locals should really take advantage of is his service bill. So when you graduate from high school, it's almost like a gap year. I would describe it as the state is going to do a program where they can place those graduates into a local municipality and work for a year and get exposed to what government is. And that's going to create a new passion for what you do, for what our members do. Here's local government, here's how it works. And this bill, the service year, is going to be huge. We supported it.
And he mentioned it was the first, wasn't he the first governor?
I think the first one.
Yeah.
To be publicly funded. So we got that through. It was a big win for him. It could be a true win for local government, whether you're county or a local municipality. I think bringing youth back into what we do is a huge thing.
Right, that's great. On the looking at infrastructure, I noted that you all supported one bill that sort of created the ability of local government to get grants. I think it was, I'm trying to think of specific municipal grant authority. Are you familiar with that bill?
There's 2,300 bills reviewed. It's probably the one of the few that don't stick out in my mind, but we have an amazing advocacy team. But I will tell you, I think grants are where, as an organization, we need to focus on. Whether it's helping our locals write grants with technical assistance, and that's really my focus. We just passed a strategic plan for ML, and I would like to see us hire someone to help our locals write grants and have that person on staff. So that's my goal as an executive. That's hopefully going to happen in the next few months.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Because that makes a lot of sense. You know, a classic case of that is that, and they didn't do it with enough time and consideration, but you know, the federal bill, transportation bill that was passed a year and a half ago, it continues to provide huge opportunities in the way of grants. And I saw a notice back in June where they ask local governments to prepare applications to get some transportation and planning money to really look at the issue of planning for pedestrian safety, but also traffic. I mean, figuring out that balance, which is always difficult, right? You've got to, you don't, you know, you hear it all the time, local communities that have smaller streets, but people need to get to work and they need to get to their house versus the issue of pedestrian safety.
I think we're leaving a lot of money on the table as a state. I believe the governor sees it that way as well, but our localities, we don't have the staff or the capacity to apply for grants. So I think looking at the federal grants that are available is going to be a huge first step. MML applied for its first grant 6 weeks after I arrived. It was for telework policy, and what we were able to do was to save, I think, $14,000 on new equipment for our staff. If we did that more often, we can stabilize members' dues. We can stabilize what we're doing in terms of membership for ticket prices.
Right.
So I'd like to see us do that. Something else that we're doing is becoming an affiliate league state for the National League of Cities.
Okay.
And that will provide us federal grant access as well as
Okay.
technical assistance for those federal grants and programming. And
Interesting.
so I'm really
So
trying to
MML
expand
will
that.
have essentially the mechanism so their membership could come in and utilize you all.
Yes, so
Okay.
the local municipalities can directly call NLC. Anything with any population less than 20,000 will have a direct membership now with NLC starting in January.
Oh, excellent.
And provide them excellent, really lobbying coverage for what's happening
Right.
downtown in Capitol Hill, all that access.
Right.
So we're really hoping that can help transform some of our local communities.
That's great. So there were a couple of bills that dealt with municipal ordinance change and
Sure.
notice. And can you tell me a little bit, because that I know Chevy Chase Village, for example, we have a very thorough communication process about what we're considering related to our charter
Sure.
and that kind of thing. How did that come about, and what were the issues that municipalities and MML and your staff were looking at to get that passed? I assume,
So
I think
there's-
you all supported that.
So there's
right?
actually a policy, it's called a legislative proposal process, and we're actually in the middle of it right now. So this is a great timing to talk about it.
Right.
If a local municipality has a bill they would like support on, we ask them to submit it. I believe this year's deadline is July 1st. Our legislative committee, which is being appointed next week for our new president coming in from town of Galena and Eastern Shore, he will create a committee that will review all those policies.
Okay.
And in September, our board is convening, and they will look at the policies and determine which ones they want to support as a organizational wide. So if a local municipality has a policy they're concerned about, or would like, I know I've received an email from your village as well. I think Delegate Solomon was a supporter of it, and we put in testimony for it.
That's
But
great.
that's one level of way of doing it. If you want full board support, we ask all municipalities to send in proposals now.
Okay.
And our legislative team manages that along with our volunteer.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
So it
a
really
great
helps
opportunity.
you. I know that
It helps us hear the issues. We
Yeah.
can't be a part of something we don't know about.
Right, and also, because you've done it at a lot of different levels, right? But informing legislators, you have to be consistent.
Absolutely.
You've got to prioritize what membership issues really are,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're focused on what can be accomplished and that kind of thing. It sounds like that process will help a lot.
It will, and I
Yeah.
think our number one job, other than being the voice for you, the municipality in Annapolis, is being an educator and explaining here's how it works. Many people don't understand how municipal government gets money.
Right.
And sales tax, or property tax.
Right, right.
Several people in the legislature I've spoken with thought we receive sales tax. Right? Like, oh, we don't, but we'd
Yeah.
love to talk about that.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Let me capitalize on that conversation.
Let's see
But
if
we
we
are
can get a nip at
educating
that
as
one,
much
right?
as we can. And actually,
Yeah.
that's our biggest win this session. And I never thought cannabis, I'm a policeman and daughter and granddaughter, so I never thought cannabis would be such a big part of my life.
Right.
I've never participated because my father scares me still, and I'm married with 3 kids. But cannabis is the history-winning point for MML. This is the first time in our 87 years we've received sales tax. So if you have a retail store or growth facility in your boundaries, you'll receive 1.5% of the sales tax.
Wow.
We've never done that in our history, and that was a big win for us this year. I don't think
It
we
also would serve as a precedent a little bit.
It
right?
is a precedent.
Yeah,
And
I
we
mean,
are-
in terms of looking at where you can get political support for the nexus
Yes.
between a fee or a tax and the
Well, we
and
are
the
the-
efficiency of a municipality to deliver that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are one of 10 states who don't receive sales tax. Maryland leads in so many ways and is progressive in so many ways.
Right.
This is one area we're completely lagging behind, and that's my mission right now for next, hopefully during Governor Moore's term, to talk with that team
Right.
and get their support down the line. Can we figure out a way, whether it's a small percentage of alcohol tax for cities like Annapolis, who it's a 9% tax, they get
Right.
not a dollar back, and what do municipalities provide? Law enforcement, public safety, the sidewalks we talked
Right.
about, the zoning, the signs.
Right.
Comp plans, industry-wide, the cannabis is going to change every single person's comps plans in the
Right.
municipalities.
Definitely will. Yeah.
It is not a cheap process to do. Most of your towns are hiring consultants, and they cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
While the 1.5% is a huge deal for us, it's not going to be nearly enough to cover the costs. And then we haven't even gotten to the public education campaigns and where you can actually use the facilities, if you could say consumption or not. So there's a lot of opportunity around cannabis to build upon, snowball. That's what we're doing. And in fact, we're actually doing a seminar in August for our locals.
Okay.
It's about the bill. It's 100 pages, and we can't do 100 pages at their summer conference
Right.
and explain, here's what
Right.
it means for you.
Right.
But we have a great agenda already. It's August 10th in Governor Calvert House in Annapolis. The chairman of the committee is speaking, who wrote the bill. We have the chair of the Black Caucus coming to speak to us, and the head of the administration, Will Tilburg, for the governor, is going to be there. So we're very excited to bring that to our municipalities.
Right.
We have a city manager interviewing HR folks, talk about employment and those issues. And we have a zoning panel as well and a revenue panel. So I think we've hit all the highlights of the bill to kind of break it down
Right.
over a full day. But those are just some things that we can't do in a quick webinar for our members or a magazine article.
Right. Well, Theresa, congratulations. We're going to take a quick break and
Absolutely.
then be right back. David Winstead, I'm talking to Theresa Kuhns, who is CEO of MML, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm David Winstead, and this is the program In the Know. And we have a great guest here today, Theresa Kuhns, who is the CEO of MML, the Maryland Municipal League. And we've had a great discussion. Theresa,
Yes.
tell me a little bit. One of the things that I know our community, municipality, Chevy Chase, is dealing with is really the issue of recruiting people
Of course.
in public service at the local level, and the cost of living in Maryland, and obviously the Metro Washington area and that kind of thing. What do you hear from your membership in that regard? You know, MML has always provided an incredibly important tool. I know that over the years I've served on our board, I often refer to the fact that we need to make sure we're competitive with the MML salary surveys.
Sure.
What's your sense? How do you view the challenges still to have adequate staffing on the local government level?
Well, thank you for asking. We actually did our first member survey in almost 10 years in January. I wanted to get a pulse of what our members are talking about, and this is part of it. We do have a Maryland City Managers Group that had a conference in May, and I know this is part of their discussions as well. We're all going through it, is the best answer to give you. I'm doing it with my own staff. How do I make it competitive,
Right.
give enough COLA, provide a cost of living for them to come to the office every day and come and want to work?
Right.
And it's part of flexibility. I think it's really a post-COVID response. How do you manage that?
Right.
So we are hybrid. I'm trying to be flexible in many ways.
And what is on the hybrid side of it? Do you have a requirement are you totally virtual, or do you have a requirement for people to be in Annapolis for a certain?
We are 3-2 right now, so 3 in the office, 2 home.
Okay.
And this summer, after the summer conference, and this is going to be a secret now on TV, I'm going to give Fridays, which is a normal Fridays off during the
Right.
summer after the conference. So it'll be a 2-2 split at that point.
Got it.
But
Well, that sort of seems to be the norm.
it is the norm,
in
especially in
both the
association
public
world
and private
yeah.
sector. I mean, I know I've been with a law firm, and that's sort of where it's balanced
Yes.
out. You see about 3 days in
Yes.
and 2 days out.
And you know, I think there's that flexibility provides a little bit of relief. It's hard to run and get prescriptions for your child if you're working 5 days a week and on the road back and forth if the
Right.
pharmacy's closed. I think being more flexible and being more in tune, and frankly, I try to lead from a path of empathy. I mentioned my 3 children earlier. I have 2 with special needs. It's not an easy world to be a part of, but
Right.
I am aware of what it's like to have to worry about a sick child or a
Right.
child having a bad day at school.
Right.
And that's the same for my staff. I am completely empathetic, and I want them to understand, come to me if you need to. We can
Right.
figure this out.
Yeah.
And we have a great team at MML, and I think when city managers and or towns, that's what you need to lead with, frankly, is we all have different things we don't know about. It's almost that Be Kind campaign we
Right.
see everywhere. We don't know what people are dealing with outside the office, and sometimes they bring it to the office and you'll see it. I can tell when my staff's having a bad day, and I don't think it's always work related. And I think we have to do the same. One of the best things that we do is provide great health care, and that's through the local government insurance trust, which we created back in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, one of the requests, we didn't have short-term disability, and I have a lot of younger staff who would like to make sure they had something to protect themselves. And we moved to that, and we were able to fully cover it by changing some lines in our budget. I did make some cuts because the economy is a little uncertain right now. I think we're all in that way, and I worry about the inflation rates, frankly. So I made cuts in certain programs and realigned our money where it made more sense, where we can be more accessible to our community, so our members can get more access to us. We are redoing our website. That's being released in 2 weeks. And on that website, you as a member can now go into the back end. It's going to be called MD Community, and you can talk to other people. It's almost like a Facebook for our members. You'll have your own room you can be in for your village. You can have it in your own chapter.
Question to
what's your best practice on this? How are you
Smart.
recruiting people? Where are you going? Who are you working with? We'll allow all our folks to do that with one another, and we'll manage that process. There'll be a room for our board of directors to talk in, and it'll be private for those folks, but we'll have a lot of public spaces for our members to connect. So we are trying to modernize some of our practices.
Yeah, and that's important. You know, I
is.
serve on a group called the National Advisory Council to BOMA. And BOMA,
I've heard
with
it,
your
yep.
relative background, it's the Building Owners
Yes.
Managers Association. They do that very well. They basically, it's maybe 50 people, and they are the portfolio managers of the larger real estate companies. So the Vornados of the world and JBGs, and mostly commercial, not.
Okay.
But they come in with questions, and you can see them, you know, security of an office building, you know, what technology are you using? It's very effective. I've always seen, I've watched it now for a number of years, because I'm included in on that.
Even our committees, we're going to be more of virtual presence going forward. We went fully virtual for 2 years. There's no reason why we can't find a happy medium somewhere in there. I want to make sure we value our members' time. So if you're doing legislative committee, you are meeting every Wednesday during session. 10 weeks in a row of heavy lifting, and you're reading 50 bills prior to each meeting. Right. To have someone from the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland drive to Annapolis every week, it would be insane.
Right.
I'd rather get the best 90 minutes from them at the meeting on Zoom than in the office after driving a long time. So I think we have a good mix of how we're going to approach that. But I think many towns need to be more flexible, and that's really what I would suggest.
Theresa, you've seen, I don't know that a lot of people fully understand in Maryland. I spent a few years in Annapolis, so I had some
You
sense
survived. Well, congratulations.
What a great town, though.
It's beautiful.
Holy moly.
We love it.
What a great work environment being done. But explain to the audience a little bit about the legislative process, is specifically about the time taken in consideration. You know, I remember my years down there, it was usually 2 or 3 sessions, 4 sessions before a really good, worthwhile legislative initiative could actually get through.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned the summer study that you're
on the ADU bill,
doing the ADUs, so they take time to bring in experts. And so explain, I think it'd be interesting for people to understand sort of how Annapolis works, you know, how the ideas come up, how they get considered in committee, and then, you know, and then come back the next session. It'd be
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think many associations like MML or the Realtors, you play defense more than you play offense. And defense really is defending yourself against a bill. So this year we took 32 oppositions on bills, and we actually were able to defeat 29 of those. And 3 of the bills that passed, we were amended so heavily we weren't opposed at the end. Okay. But when you're playing offense and you have a bill that you want to get passed, whether it's a charter issue, it takes a good 2 or 3 years. You need to find your champions. You need to educate first. Right. You do your champions, you find those who are going to carry the ball across the finish line for you, and sometimes it takes quite a bit. Most of the work in Annapolis, as you know, is done in committee. Right. So you have to find those champions on a certain committee who will try to get it out of committee. It can take 2 or 3 years to get done. And
do you think, as I did, but you've had a lot, you know, more involvement. It's a appropriate due process, instead of sort of having bills come in and for one special interest that might in fact have economic or other related negative impacts. It really does kind of proof it, right?
Absolutely.
The fact that you do 2 or 3 sessions on a legislative proposal, that it gives, you know, both a chance to think, get study groups, get input from the municipalities, that kind of thing. So you agree that it's
to get work done is not a lot of time. And it's 90 days where you don't see your family. You are working in the office every day or up in the halls, which also has terrible Wi-Fi, by the way. It's been awful trying to get work done while you're in somewhere and you can't access anything. But 3,000 bills are usually introduced, between 2,000 and 3,000. That is a lot to review in a short time frame. Right. And also several times you'll see our team especially, or MACO, our sister organization I like to call them, our members are running back and forth because we're going to 4 or 5 hearings in one afternoon and trying to be there. I know Michael
So how often, just on that issue, MACO versus MML.
Oh, I wouldn't call it versus, we're a team.
No, I understand that, but you know, if you all have common concerns about legislation that should not be passed, is it usually that MACO and MML are together? How
Yes.
often do they overlap? It's pretty much a majority
It's usually
of the time?
95% of the time we are on
Okay.
the same page. And
Yeah.
if we're in one hearing and our bill that we both are going to support or testify on is another, we'll cover each other if we need to.
Okay.
And the legislators seem to understand that we work very well together. Their
Yeah.
team is fantastic.
So there are not many conflicting issues
Not many.
between
It's
counties.
very few things. And that was actually the first discussion I had with Michael Sanderson at MACA. We went and talked right when I first started. And he's like, here are the 3 things we don't agree on. Everything else is fine. And I'm like, okay, I'm easy. I can do that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we had a good meeting and laid it out.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to get your perspective, given your chamber background and then your realtor. I mean, you know, the realtor community, you know a lot better than I, but I've always found my friends who are realtors incredible people. I mean, they're such self-starters. It's a competitive market. You know, you have to secure your client base. You have to show the seller or the buyer that you're worth your while
Yes.
and that kind of thing. But given your kind of economic background with both obviously the chamber, how often do you reflect on, okay, I represent the municipalities in Maryland, right? How often can you give them advice and counsel that a particular initiative or is really anti-economic development? That, you know, it's really, if you think about it in the overview, because I do get concerned, candidly. I grew up in Baltimore.
Okay.
My father had a business in Baltimore, and I've lived in Maryland all my life. But I also, because I've been an attorney involved in development-related issues, you know, Maryland has a challenge on business climate issues. I've had this discussion with both governors,
Okay.
Larry Hogan and Moore, and, you know, I think we see it. There are reports that do come out.
Sure.
There's one that recently came out by the home builders.
Okay.
Maryland Home Builders, MBIA, that really talked about the challenges in retaining jobs and what's happened over a decade about businesses going to Northern Virginia in many cases. And what's your sense of how MML could be, and given your background, economic development and
Sure.
housing background, how do you think that you could help municipalities sort of understand maybe the aggregate impact of what might be considered that really in fact would not be good in the long term for retaining population, retaining residents? Do you have a sense of that? Or I know it's...
Coming from my background on the realtor side, and you're right, they are great people. If you look at your T-ball teams in your town, it's the realtors who are sponsoring them, it's local small business and a lot of town members.
Right.
You don't have that feel of community without everyone involved, and I believe the realtors have done that. I have very good friends in the realtor community still, and I'm proud to call them friends, and we work together now, and that's lovely to see. I'm going to give you a real life example on retaining and bringing business to Maryland, because that's actually a focus I'm trying to take given my opportunity with NLC.
Right.
We recently did a cybersecurity focus group at our offices from a national firm that works in 30 other states. And they are going to work with us. We have an agreement with them to provide services to towns and cities, and they also provide IT services. But what they're going to do is hire staff on the ground here and create work here. So they're going to bring in 30 to 50 people based on what we can do and sign our members up to have cybersecurity
Interesting.
services. So we're bringing this national firm to Maryland, which never had a presence here before.
Wow.
And our hope is they come up beside us, they help
Right.
our towns. 70% of all the phishing attacks are from a simple human error for an email or a phone call, and people just say, yep, here's the information, go.
Right.
We are getting cyber attacks left and right. And I think it's probably the one benefit we don't offer
Right.
quite yet.
Right.
But when I found this group and saw so many other states work with them and realized that they would hire new staff and retain staff on the ground, I'm
Right.
like, well, that's a great opportunity for Maryland to bring
Great
a new business
idea.
in.
Great idea.
So they're starting.
And Maryland Maryland has a major advantage in
Yes,
cybersecurity.
absolutely, given our
because
area.
of Fort Meade and because of...
And Prince George's County is the #1 STEM high school county in this country,
Is that
I think.
right?
Yes.
Interesting.
So we have the defense industry here. Why wouldn't we have a cybersecurity firm supporting our local government?
Right.
And that's what I hope they can do and provide for our members. So that's a real life example of who we're trying to attract.
Well, Theresa, that's great. I really want to thank you for taking the
course.
time. You know, you first of all, as on a board of a municipality, I really
Thank you for serving.
Well, I appreciate your hard work and your new focus and some of these new ideas. I think they're great.
Thank
I
you.
mean, the one on cybersecurity is great. The one obviously looking at dwelling units
Yes.
and affordable housing. But thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you for
the
having
time.
me and having
Yeah.
ML. And I know you speak to municipalities through this program. It's their organization, and we want to do the best by it.
Well, I think they've learned a lot today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you. This is David Winstead with the program In the Know. Thank you for joining us.